basically the last man on earth for you.
He shrugged and looked away, hiding the bitter and vulnerability in his eyes, while I stared back at him incredulously. "You can't be serious," I blurted, feeling even more agitated that he could even think something like that. After everything that I had told him and shown him, did he really think it meant so little to me? Did he really think I could be so fickle with my emotions given more options? And as he still avoided my gaze, an indication that he was, in fact, quite serious, I grew offended. "That is so damn stupid," Edward, I snapped, absolutely insulted that he thought so little of my emotional integrity. I was preparing myself for my own lengthy rant on the subject, when his eyes met mine, and flashed with fury.
"Thanks a whole fucking lot,"
he spat, removing his hands from the pockets and throwing them in the air.
"It's just stupid."
He raised his eyebrows high on his forehead, and smiled a large maniacal grin.
"Fucking perfect. Stupid."
He nodded his head and his hands fell against his thighs with a clap.
"Why didn't I think of that?"
he questioned, his grin falling and transforming into a sneer, as my mouth hung agape at his mood swing. His finger was pointing at me then, accusing, as his voice lowered to a growl.
"Every time you felt like you were inferior, I went out of my goddamn way to make you feel otherwise. I spent months, Bella, fucking months, trying to just—"
He shook his head and dropped his finger, unable to finish his statement as I gaped at him.
"And all along I could have just told you how fucking stupid you were being. So thanks."
He turned away, running his hands through his hair, and I couldn't have felt more awful if someone had snuck up behind me and stabbed me in the back. He was right. My insecurities probably seemed just as ridiculous to him, yet he never grew frustrated with reassuring me he was patient with my stupid sex crap, spending night after night with his technique on me when I was the only one even worried about it. He did that all for me, and I just shot down his insecurities in the worst way possible. My shoulders slumped, and my chest ached as I stared at the back of his head, and the guilt inside of me burgeoned. Then I had to clear my mind and think. I had to wade through the muddy exhaustion to put myself in his shoes and figure out the best approach at fixing his fears. Were mine ever fixed? They weren't. We never got to make love, and I never figured out how it was even possible for me, but at least he tried, and at least he made me feel without question that he wanted me. I pushed myself off the brick wall and shuffled through the grass to his side, peeking up at his face. His eyes were closed and his shoulders were stiff, radiating tension and residual anger, but he didn't react to my presence. So I stepped around him, facing him, and got closer, touching his chest with mine, feeling his breaths against me. He kept his eyes closed still, and his hair was a disheveled mess from his fingers and frustration. Grabbing two fistfuls of his jacket, I pulled myself up to his face and pressed my lips against his firmly. But he turned his face away, forcing my lips to his clenched jaw, and then I was the frustrated party. "Stop doing that," I growled against his skin, pulling him closer to me. "You never kiss me anymore." I made no attempt at masking the venom in my voice, because I had let it go so many times. I had let him pull his lips away without feeling the dejection and hurt, because I was giving him time. But now he was being the hypocrite, asking me to reassure him while feeding my own insecurities with his actions. His face didn't move, and his eyes didn't open, so I let go of his jacket, and grabbed his face in my hands. I forced it to mine, smashing my lips to his, and pressing my body closer in frustration. When he didn't react immediately, I sucked his top lip into my mouth, and with a sharp intake of breath, his mouth opened. His tongue darted out of his mouth, and shoved itself between my lips forcefully as his hands moved to my waist. He gripped my hips and aggressively yanked me closer, a low growl emanating from his chest, as our tongues met. It wasn't sweet, and it was miles away from being anything near tender. I smashed my face closer, our teeth banging together as I pushed my tongue deeper, and met his aggression with my own. His teeth were skimming my lips and tongue, pinching and scraping as he plunged deeper and tightened his grip on my waist. I breathed raggedly into his mouth, moving impossibly closer to his body, and suddenly he was spinning me around, walking me backwards. I was stumbling, attached to his lips, and forced to grab hold of his disheveled hair to steady myself. I knew it was hurting him, but the grunt he made, low and gritty in his throat, reminded me that he liked it like that. And then I was pressed against the rough brick wall, and he was wedging me between it and his urgent mouth. I pulled his hair harder, willing him to let it out, and he bucked his hips against mine, already aroused and grunting breathlessly into my mouth once again. But this was more than lust. It was more than affection. And it was much, much more than love. This was mine, and Edward's unbridled frustration. Venting by a kiss as our teeth clanked and our tongues dove and danced aggressively. I pulled and grunted with him as I violently returned the kiss, eager and brimming with need to show him how much I wanted him, how much I needed him. I yanked his hair in my fist and pushed away from the wall to get closer, deeper, and rougher than him. He abruptly jerked away, breathing raggedly as his palms went to slam against the brick wall, at either side of my head. His body was still flattened against mine as I panted and opened my eyes to meet his. His eyes held a dark glimmer as he trapped me between him and the wall, his arms creating stiff and tense bars of imprisoning flesh and leather around me. He was breathing unevenly against my face, staring at me, and my hands were still full of his hair. This dark glimmer was something I had never seen in his eyes before. He was always so careful so careful to make me feel at ease and relaxed in his presence. Any other time, I might have cowered away and muttered the safe word. I could see in his eyes, hidden beneath the glimmer, he was expecting just that. But I wanted it. I was almost horrified at the excitement that gave me the way it made my knees weak and my thighs tingle with sharp sparks of electricity bounding up to my pelvis and torso. It made me feel ashamed to want more of it. To see Edward looking at me like this particular way. I should have been frightened of it. If I just opened my mouth and said the word, I knew he'd back away, and he'd never resent me for not allowing him to have it. Even though he wanted it desperately. But, instead, I was going to give it to him. Not because I was afraid to fight back, but because I wanted it. Deep inside of my being, something was begging for it, twisting in the pit of my belly and making my limbs limp with anticipation. I exhaled and leaned my head back against the wall in surrender, while releasing his hair. I could see how my passive posture amplified that dark glimmer as his eyes grew wide in surprise and his arms flexed around me. He wasn't expecting this. His eyes lurched to my lips and he pressed himself closer to my body, testing my reaction. I didn't move, and I remained perfectly calm as he tentatively took my wrists in his hands and pressed them against the wall, above my head. I bit my lip and remained passive, as the shameful excitement of my weak position below Edward overcame any panic I would have normally felt. When I didn't dance or need the safe word, his eyes darkened and he gripped my wrist tighter as his lips once again crashed to mine. He took the kiss with a new aggression, his tongue plunging deep into my mouth with a gritty grunting sound that made my legs weak. His strength and control against my feeble and delicate body was hard and demanding, and inappropriately arousing. I kissed back as much as I could, and my wrists remained still and complacent as he pressed them into the rough bricks. That same dark glimmer remained and radiated from his kiss. It was in the taste of his tongue, in the sound of his growl and the feel of his body, as it trapped me against the wall. Absolute dominance.
Edward's point of view. She was completely pressed against me, soft and warm and delicate and all mine. She was my girl. They wanted to take her away, but they knew she'd never fucking leave on her own. So they did the next best thing. They used me to get her into therapy, so she'd get better, and finally see how great her options were. And that would happen. She'd finally realize she could do so much better. She could be with someone nice and normal and clean and okay to take home to and test me without flipping out over menial questioning. She'd finally see how much of a piece of shit I was. Carlyle spoke that day in his study, the same that he had snuck into my room and found us there sleeping and happy. The same conversation that had planted the seeds of doubt into my mind. He spoke as if he were simply warning me, like he was just saying words because he cared and was afraid I was putting too much faith in her love for me. He stared into my eyes and uttered the words that had since become one of my worst fears.
What are you going to do if 10 years down the line she is finally capable of other male contact?
He went on some rant about how he wasn't attacking her candor when I blew up at his insinuation, insisting his point was to merely prepare me for a possibility I refused to consider. He was afraid she was too naive to know any differently. And deep down, some part of me knew how fucking true that was. And it haunted me. She kept denying it because she was so blinded by the fact I was her only option. It wasn't like some other motherfucker could come and sweep her off her feet. I was all she had. But she was all I had, and goddammit I had the options. And I didn't want them, I wanted her. She was my girl. I'd never had anything that was mine. My car, my room, my bed, and fuck even my goddamn tube of toothpaste and bottle of shampoo. It all belonged to Carlisle. All the little necessities that made my life reliable and stable belonged to him. Nothing was mine. If I walked out of the door tomorrow and left his home, all I'd have would be the clothes on my back, and her. Didn't she understand that? I couldn't take the chance. And I could imagine them planning this. Planning to get her better so she could know more than my touch. They wanted to take her away and give her to someone else. The vision came into my mind, unbidden and infuriating, as I imagined her hands on them. Touching them like she touched me, kissing them like she kissed me, loving them like. I invaded her mouth, pressing my body against her while gripping her wrists above her head, and feeling more awake and focused in that moment than any upper or line of coke could ever make me feel alive. My blood boiling with her soft moan at the feel of my complete control, and this was so fucking wrong. Why was she enjoying this so much? Why did her eyes flash in excitement when I was rough with her tongue, and her wrists, and her lips? It didn't make any sense to me. She should have said the word to stop me from being so fucking monstrous. But she submitted, leaning back against the wall, and making herself completely vulnerable to all of my anger and animalistic need. Seeing her like that, willing to let me finally show dominance even after all those nights in my bed, that taught me I couldn't. It stirred something in me, it ignited, and raged until it was a violent and primal instinct to completely possess her. She was my girl. It was fueled by so many things. It was the first opportunity I had had to kiss her in almost 3 weeks. It was feeling her control me, asking me to stay there, and knowing damn well I could never say no to her. It was the feeling of helplessness that filled the pit of my stomach with a heavy dread that festered and suffocated me at the thought of her moving on to someone else. It was the first time in weeks, maybe ever, that I felt in control of anything. I let the feeling and the high it provided consume me as I took her offering without hesitation. But you don't treat people you love like this. You don't grab their wrists and shove them further against the wall. You don't feel pleasure in trapping and controlling them. You don't get enjoyment in possessing them like this. And you definitely don't get hard because of it. But I was. It was confusing and downright terrifying, because even though I knew treating her like this was wrong and unforgivably depraved, I couldn't stop that animalistic urge. I really wanted to love her affectionately and tenderly. I wanted to hold her hand and carry her books like some fucking step-forward husband. I wanted to pull away and take her into the lunchroom and hold her to my chest while she slept. But I was doing this. Growling into her mouth and biting her lips and shoving her against the wall. Trapping her beneath me so that she couldn't leave and no one could take her away. She was my girl. I couldn't deduce who was more fucked up in the situation. Her for allowing it and liking it, or me for doing it and liking it. I couldn't stop my hands from reaching for the zipper on her hoodie and pulling away just far enough to unzip it. I tore my lips away, panting in hisses, and shoving the fabric aside. Take it off, I ordered in a breathless sneer, hating myself for being like this, but needing the barriers gone. She complied as I unzipped my jacket and we were both tearing them off frantically while our chests heaved and our pelvises remained pressed tightly against one another. And once